Hello again, everyone. Sherelle from Enchantment in Greencastle, Eleuthera in the Bahamas. And as you may know, I am a writer. I am also the owner of a gift shop in Greencastle. The gift shop is Enchantment. I am continuing a series of readings from books that I have written. I've read from this collection before. This is Enchantment Story of the Month, and it was written and published in 2011. The little passage that I'm going to read today is a part of a series. There are 5 sections in this particular story, and the 5 of these people happen to attend, will actually go out to eat at a Chinese restaurant on the same day, and they all receive the same fortune cookie reading. So I am just going to read about one of the lives, and the story is entitled, "If Today Was Your Last Day, How Would You Spend It?" I think it's a very important question for all of us. This is Adele's story. Adele cracked open her fortune cookie and read it and laughed out loud. For a moment, she couldn't control her laughter and banged a pale, simply red, nail-polish hand on the table, covering her mouth with a tear-stained handkerchief with the other. "Today is your last day. How will you spend it?" the cookie read. "Well, you're certainly right about the first part," she said to herself. "But the question begs an answer." The restaurant was empty except for Adele. The only other customers she had seen here today were a group of noisy black teenagers and a strikingly handsome young white man. How ironic. Which of the two did she relate to most? And why must a life always be about choosing one or the other? The teenagers, one young girl in particular, reminded Adele of her mother. She had been a strong African-American woman, a member of one of the most prolific groups of black activists. Her mother had joined a line of protesters to fight against discrimination against blacks in America. Her short courtship and spur-of-the-moment marriage to Adele's father had been nothing more than a statement. It signified her mother's platform that blacks shouldn't be placed in a box and beat down each time they raised their heads outside it, heads that whites chopped off if they dared to attempt to step outside the box. Her father's love, genuine admiration, and devotion were unrequited. But on the rare occasion the noise of the struggle abated, the two would gather in each other's arms and dance. Adele saw them dancing, and this memory was her choice to keep with her. The handsome white man had reminded Adele of her father. Together, the pair signified the struggle that had pulled her apart at the seams since the day she was conceived. Adele wasn't afraid of dying. She wasn't upset by the cookie. How the fortunes knew her intentions was the big question. Legend had it that if a fortune cookie relayed a bad fortune, not eating the cookie would prevent it coming true. Other legend states that the entire cookie had to be eaten for good fortunes to come to fruition. Adele preferred to join the Chinese women portrayed in the Joy Luck Club, who concluded that the cookies were nothing more than bad instructions. Whatever the case, it really didn't matter now. Adele walked out of the restaurant and hailed a cab. "West Point Prison, please," she said to the surprised driver. An hour later, she was sitting behind a plate glass, staring into the eyes of her father. "Has there been any changes?" "I'm afraid not, baby," her father said. She could tell he was afraid, near tears, and it broke her heart. She wanted desperately to confide in him that he wouldn't be alone. But that would make the last experience of his life all the more excruciating. Will they grant you the last request? Adele asked, daring to hold on to one shred of hope. If his request had been refused, it would make her defining moment seem not so significant. It would be similar to a word in motion when suddenly the pen runs out of ink. A painter's brush stroke would be frozen mid-stroke. The music, nothing more than a half note. She had lived that all her life. She couldn't bear it in death. Yes, he said, his eyes lighting up, which transformed hers. On account of my good behavior, I'm going to get ready. See you in 5 minutes in the courtyard. The courtyard was well maintained, the grass freshly cut and washed after a rain shower just that morning. Her father was scheduled for execution at 6 p.m., and Adele would commit suicide around that time. She would take what amounted to a bottle of her antidepressant prescriptions that she had been saving each month and wash it down with a glass of Chianti. She estimated it would take a while for the potion to take effect, so she would be leaving the world sometime after her father. Torn yet again between devout Christian faith of her mother and atheistic convictions of her father, Adele had prayed for forgiveness from a God who had clearly stated there would be no retribution for this act of the ultimate sin. From the tower overlooking the 10-foot electrical fence, 2 guards watched as her father took her in his arms. There were 2 more guards just outside the chain-link fence, machine guns poised, ready should her father make one wrong step. Adele and her father were oblivious of them as the music began to play. The speakers were normally used to shout orders at death row inmates. But this unprecedented event, the smooth sounds of Dance with My Father, bellowed. It was as if the whole world had stopped. Everyone and everything disappeared except Adele, her father, Luther, and the music. With her semi-curly head on his shoulders, her hair flowing down over the hand on the small of her back, Adele closed her hazel eyes and danced with her father. Behind her eyes flowed memories of her childhood, having both her parents tell her tales about their support and participation in the freedom rides in the 60s, of having her mother pulled abruptly from her life in a protest march where she was shot by white supremacists who was never convicted. There were memories of her father raising her in a loving single-parent home, working hard, educating her, and always being there for her. Most predominant in her memory banks were standing on her father's feet from the time she was 3 years old as he taught her to dance, and they had danced together ever since. During their dances, all was well with the world, and Adele found her place in it. At school, among a mixed-race community, Adele had been criticized by blacks for passing. Simultaneously, she had been ostracized by whites for not being white enough. In college, Adele attempted to join the causes her mother had fought for, but although she understood it, she couldn't accept the views of most of her black peers that she should deny her white heritage in order to fully accept her black one. Why should she have to choose? Why the overwhelming compulsion to choose her black race over her white one? The fact that blacks were once slaves and considered less of a human being made it mandatory for every person with 1 drop of black blood to now claim the race predominant, and those who dared differ were considered ashamed of being black. Adele could never understand this conviction. The perpetuation by gods and goddesses of Hollywood, who were biracial yet called themselves black, irritated her. Where was the biracial box? She would like to check that one. But until that became an option, what was so terrible with her checking white and not having it as a slap in her black mother's face when black people did it all the time? She was surprised at the rise in the number of people of mixed heritage who claimed black as their race after Barack Obama was elected president of the United States. But America hadn't chosen its first black president in Barack Obama. It had chosen its first biracial president. America had yet to have a black president. Like Barack Obama, Adele had been raised by whites in her family, with little help from the black side of it. The pressures to go back to her roots and live her life as a black woman was something she couldn't relate to. In a black and white world, Adele would have had both influences to guide her into becoming a complete version of her own person, but the world had many shades of gray. When Adele began dating a co-worker who was black, the relationship had started out as any ordinary one. But soon her boyfriend began to pressure her about choosing, insisting that what her mother had died for shouldn't be forgotten. After a bitter argument in which Adele stated she wanted to end her relationship with him, her boyfriend had gotten violent. In an obscure bedroom at a Christmas party they were attending, he tried to force himself on her. Adele had called her father on her cell phone, and when he found her, he had been so enraged at her emotional state, he had grabbed her boyfriend and thrown him against the wall. When the noise had finally alerted the rest of the party, it was already too late. Her boyfriend's partly lifeless body was hauled into an ambulance, and her father was hauled off to jail. The group that testified at the trial were determined that her father would pay for his crime. He had to pay for her mother's death as well. His pleas of self-defense paled in comparison to the tear-stained, fabricated swears to the brutal murder because he didn't want his daughter dating someone black. Her cell phone had conveniently disappeared and was unavailable as evidence of her frantic call for help. Her father had later been given the death penalty, a life for a life. Adele had become depressed. Her life had little meaning now, and as an only child with both parents soon to be gone, Adele wanted the contaminated bloodline to end with her. Any child she might have had in the future and the generations after her would be spared from fighting this battle for the rest of their lives. But Adele didn't say any of this to her father. She danced with him for as long as she was allowed, and when she kissed him on the cheek, told him she loved him, and watched him being led off by 2 guards. At 6 p.m., she took the bottle of pills, sipped the Chianti, and laid herself down to sleep. That is If Today Was Your Last Day. It's published in Enchantment Story of the Month 2011, which is also volume 2 in the Lulu collection. As always, if you've liked this video, please like, comment, and share it to someone who you think may be interested. And of course, buy the book. My books are available at Enchantment, on Lulu, on Amazon, at the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas, and some of them are at Buy the Book. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good day.